Shalom, welcome back. We are up to book 19 in the sermons of Peter. So we'll just go ahead and get right into it. The next day, Peter came forth earlier than usual, and seeing Simon with many others waiting for him, he saluted the multitude and began to discourse. But no sooner than he began than Simon interrupted him and said, "Pass by these long introductions of yours and answer directly the questions I put to you. Since I perceive that you, as I know from what I heard at the beginning, that you have no other purpose than by every contrivance to show that the Creator himself alone is a blameless God, since, as I said, I perceive that you have such decided desire to maintain this, that you venture to declare to be false some portions of the Scriptures that clearly speak against him. For this reason I have determined today to prove that it is impossible that he, being the Creator of all, should be blameless. But thus proof I can now begin if you reply to the questions which I put to you. Do you maintain that there is any prince of evil or not? For if you say that there is not, I can prove to you from many statements, and those too of your teacher, that there is. But if you honestly allow that evil one exists, then I shall speak in accordance with this belief. Do you maintain that there is any prince of evil or not? For if you say that there is not, I can prove to you from the many statements, and those too of your teacher, that there is. But if you honestly allow that the evil one exists, then I shall speak in accordance with this belief. And Peter said, It is impossible for me to deny the assertion of my teacher, wherefore I allow that the evil one exists, because my teacher, who spoke the truth in all things, has frequently asserted that he exists. For instance, then, he acknowledges, and he conversed with him and tempted him for 40 days, and I know that he has said somewhere else, if Satan casts out Satan, he is divided against himself. How then shall his kingdom stand? And he pointed out that he saw the evil one like lightning falling down from heaven. And elsewhere he said, He who sowed the bad seed is the devil. And again, give no pretext to the evil one. Moreover, in giving advice, he says, Let your yes be yes, and your no be no. For what is more than these is of the evil one. Also, in the prayer which he gave to us, we have it said, Deliver us from the evil one. And in another place he promised that he would say to those who are impious, Go into outer darkness, which the Father prepared for the devil and his angels. And not to prolong this statement further, I know that my teacher often said that there is an evil one, wherefore I also agree in thinking that he exists. If then, in future, you have anything to say in accordance with this belief, say it as you promised. And Simon said, Since then you have honestly confessed, on the testimony of Scriptures, that the evil one exists, state to us how he has come into existence, if indeed he has come into existence, and by whom and why. And Peter said, Pardon me, Simon, if I do not dare to affirm what has not been written, but if you say that it has been written, prove it. But if, since it has not been written, you cannot prove it, why should we run the risk of stating our opinions in regards to what has not been written? For if we discourse too daringly in regard to God, is either because we do not believe that we shall be judged, or that we shall be judged only in respect to that which we do, but not also in regards to what we believe and speak. But Simon, understanding that Peter referred to his own madness, said, Permit me to run the risk, but do not you make what you assert to be a blasphemy a pretext for retiring, for I perceive that you wish to withdraw, in order that you may escape refutation before the masses, sometimes as if you were afraid to listen to blasphemies, and at other times by maintaining that, as nothing has been written as to how and by whom and why the evil one came into existence, we ought not to dare to assert more than the Scriptures. Wherefore also, as a pious man, you affirm this only, that he exists, but by these contrivances you deceive yourself, not knowing that, if it is blasphemy to inquire accurately regarding the evil one, the blame rests with me, the accuser, and not with you, the defender of God. And if the subject inquired into is unwritten, and on this account you do not wish to inquire into it, there are some satisfactory methods which can prove to you what is sought not less effectively than the Scriptures. For instance, must it not be the case that the evil one whom you assert exists is either originated or unoriginated? And Peter said, It must be so. And Simon, therefore, if he is originated, He has been made by that very God who made all things, being either born as an animal or sent forth substantially, or resulting from an external mixture of elements. For either the matter being living or lifeless, from which he was made, was outside of him, or he came into being through God himself, or through his own self, or resulted from things non-existent, or he is a mere relative thing, or he always existed, having thus, as I think, clearly pointed out all the possible ways by which we may find him, and going along some one of these we must find him. We must therefore go along each one of these in search of his origin, and when we find him, who is his author, we must perceive that he is to blame. Or how does the matter seem to you? And Peter says, "It is my opinion that, even if it be evident that he was made by God, the Creator who made him should not be blamed, for it might perhaps be found his usefulness was most necessary of all. But if, on the other hand, it should be proved that he was not created, inasmuch as he existed forever, not even is the Creator to be blamed in this respect, since he is better than all others, even if he has not been able to put an end to a being who has no beginning, because his nature did not admit of it. Or if, being able, he does not make away with him, deeming it unjust to put an end to that which did not receive a beginning, and pardoning that which was by nature wicked, because he could not have become anything else, even if he were to wish to do so. But if, wishing to do good, he is not able, even in this case, he is good in that he has the will, though he has not the power, and while he has not the power, he is yet the most powerful of all, in that the power is not left to another. But if there is some other that is able, and yet does not accomplish it, it must be allowed that, in so far as, being able, he does not accomplish it, he is wicked in not putting an end to him, as if he took pleasure in the deeds done by him. But if not even he is able, then he is better, who, though unable, is yet not unwilling to benefit us accordingly to his ability." And Simon said, "When you have discussed all the subjects which I have laid before you, I shall show you the cause of evil. Then I shall also reply to what you have now said, and prove that God, whom you affirm to be blameless, is blamable." And Peter said, "Since I perceive from what you say at the commencement that you are striving after nothing else than to subject God as being the author of evil to blame, I have resolved to go along with you all the ways you like, and to prove that God is entirely free from blame." And Simon says, "You say this as loving God, whom you suppose you know, but you are not right." And Peter said, "But you, as being wicked and hating God, whom you have not known, utter blasphemous words." And Simon said, "Remember that you have likened me to the author of evil." And Peter said, "I confess it. I was wrong in comparing you to the evil one, for I was compelled to do so, because I have not found one who is your equal or worse than you. For this reason I likened you to the evil one, if you happen to be much more wicked than the author of evil. For no one can prove that the evil one spoke against God, but all of us who are present see you speaking daringly against him." And Simon said, "He who seeks the truth ought to not gratify anyone in any respect contrary to what was really true. For why does he make the inquiry at all? Why, I ask? For I am not able also, laying aside the accurate investigation of things, to spend all my time in the praise of that God whom I do not know." And Peter said, "You are not so blessed as to praise him, nor indeed can you do such a good deed as this, for then you will be full of him. For thus our teacher, who always spoke the truth, out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaks. Whence you, abounding in evil purposes, through ignorance, speak against the only good God, and not yet suffering what you deserve to suffer for the words which you have dared to utter. You either imagine that there would be no judgment, or perhaps you think that there is not even a God. Whence, not comprehending such long suffering as his, you are moving on to still greater madness." And Simon says, "Do you not imagine that you will frighten me into not investigating the truth of your examples? For I am so eager for the truth that for its sake I will not shrink from undergoing danger. If then you have anything to say regarding the propositions made by me at the commencement, say it now." And Peter said, "Since you compel us, after we have made accurate investigations into the contrivances of God, to venture to state them, and that too to men who are not able to comprehend thoroughly the contrivances of their fellow men, for the sake of at least those who are present, I instead of remaining silent, a course which would be most pious, shall discuss the subjects of which you wish me to speak. I agree with you in believing there is a prince of evil, of whose origin the Scriptures has ventured to say nothing, either true or false, but let us follow the inquiry in many ways as to how he has come into existence. If it is the fact that he has come into existence and of the opinions which present themselves, let us select that which is most reverential, since in the case of probable opinions, that one is assumed with confidence which is based on the principle that we ought to attribute to God that which is more reverential, and all the more so, if, when all other suppositions are removed, there still remains one which is adequate and involves less danger. But I promise you, before I proceed with the investigation, that every method in the investigation can show that God alone is blameless. But, as you said, if the evil one is created, either he is being begotten as an animal, or he has been sent forth substantially by him, or he has been compounded externally, or his will has arisen through composition, or it happened that he came into existence from things non-existent, without composition and the will of God, or he has been made by God from that which is no matter and nowhere exists, or the matter being lifeless or living, from which he has arisen was outside of God, or he fashioned himself, or he was made by God, or he was a relative thing, or he never existed, for we cannot say that he does not exist, since we have agreed in thinking that he does exist. And Simon said, well, you have distinguished all the methods of accounting for his existence in a summary manner. Now it is my part to examine these various ideas and to show that the Creator is blamable. But it is your business to prove, as you promised, that he is free from all blame. But I wonder if you will be able, for first, if the devil has been begotten from God as an animal, the vice which is his accordingly will be the same as that of him who sends him forth. And Peter said, not at all, for we see many men who are good, the fathers of wicked children, and others who are wicked, the fathers of good children, and others again who are wicked, producing both good and wicked children, and others who are good, having both wicked and good children. For instance, the first man who was created produced the unrighteous Cain and the righteous Abel. To this, Simon said, you are acting foolishly and using human examples when discoursing about God. And Peter said, speak you then to us about God without using human examples. And yet so that what you say can be understood, but you are not able to do so. For instance, then, what did you say in the beginning? If the wicked one had been begotten of God, being of the same substance as he, then God is wicked. But when I showed you from the example which you yourself adduced that wicked beings come from good and good from wicked, you did not admit the argument, for you said that the example was a human one. Wherefore, I now do not admit that the term being begotten can be used with reference for God, for it is a characteristic of man and not of God to beget. Not only so, but God cannot be good or evil, or just or unjust, nor indeed can he have intelligence or life or any of the other attributes which can exist in man, for all these are peculiar to man. And if we must not, in our investigations in regards to God, give him the good attributes which belong to man, it is not possible for us to have any thought or make any statement in regards to God. But all we can do is investigate one point alone, namely, what is his will, which he has himself allowed us to apprehend, in order that, being judged, we might be without excuse in regards to those laws which we have observed, though we knew them. In regards to those laws which we have not observed, though we knew them. And Simon, hearing this, you will not force me through shame to remain silent in regards to his substance, and to inquire into his will alone, for it is possible both to think and to speak of his substance, I mean from the good attributes that belong to him. For instance, life and death are attributes of man, but death is not an attribute of God, but life and eternal life. Furthermore, men may be both evil and good, but God can only be incomparably good. And not to prolong the subject too much, the better attributes of man are eternal attributes of God. And Peter said, tell me, Simon, is it an attribute of man to beget evil and good, and to do evil and good? And Simon said, it is. And Peter said, since you made this assertion, we must assign the better attributes to man to God, and so while men beget evil and good, God can beget good only. And while men do evil and good, God rejoices only in doing good. Thus, with respect to God, we must either not predicate any of the attributes of man and be silent, or it is reasonable that we should assign the best of the good attributes to him, and thus he alone is the cause of all good things. And Simon said, If then God is the cause only of what is good, what else can we think? Then some other principle begot the evil one, or the evil is unbegotten. And Peter said, No other power begot the evil one, nor is evil unbegotten, as I shall show in the conclusion. For now my object is to prove, as I promised that in the commencement, that God is blameless in every respect. We have granted then that God possesses in an incomparable way the better attributes that belong to man. Wherefore also it is possible for him to have been the producer of the four substances, heat, and cold, moist, and dry. These, as being at first simple and unmixed, naturally had their desire toward either good nor evil. But being produced by God and mixed externally, they were naturally become a living being, possessing the free choice to destroy those who are evil. And thus, since all things have been begotten by him, the wicked one is from no other source. Nor has he derived his evil from the God who has created all things, with whom it is impossible that evil should exist, because the substances were produced by him in a state of indifference, and carefully separated from each other, and when they were externally blended through his art, there arose through violation the desire for the destruction of the evil ones. But the good cannot be destroyed by the evil that arose, even though it should wish to do so. For it exercises its power by law only against those who sin. Ignorant then of the character of each, he makes his attempt against him, and convicting him, he punishes him. And Simon said, God being able to mingle the elements and to make his mixture so as to produce any dispositions that he may wish, why did he not make the composition of each such that it would prefer what is good? And Peter said, Now indeed our object is to show how and by whom the evil one came into being, since he did not come into being, but we shall show if he came into being blamelessly when we have finished the subject now in hand. Then I shall show how and on account of what he came into being, and I shall fully convince you that his Creator is blameless. We said then that the four substances were produced by God, and thus, through volition of him who mingled them, arose, as he wished, the choice of evils. For if it had arisen contrary to his determination, or from some other substance or cause, then God would not have had firmness of will, for by chance, even though he should not wish it, leaders of evil might continually arise who would war against his wishes. But it is impossible that this should be the case, for no living being, and especially one capable of giving guidance, can arise from accident, for everything that is produced must be produced by someone. And Simon said, But what matter is being coeval with him and possessing equal power produces his foe leaders who hinder his wishes? And Peter said, If matter is eternal, then it is the foe of no one, for that which exists forever is impassible, and what is impassible is blessed. But what is blessed cannot be receptive of hatred, since on account of its eternal creation it does not fear that it will be deprived of anything. But how does the matter rather love the Creator when it evidently sends forth its fruits to nourish all who are made by him? And how does it not fear him as superior, as trembling through earthquakes it confesses, and as though its billows ran high, yet when the teacher was sailing on it and commanded a calm, it immediately obeyed and became still? What? Did not the demons go out through fear and respect for him, and others of them desired to enter into swine? But they first entreated him before going, plainly because they had no power to enter in, even into swine, without his permission. And Simon said, But what if, being lifeless, it possesses a nature capable of producing what is evil and what is good? And Peter said, According to this statement, it is neither evil nor good, because it does not act by free choice, being lifeless and insensible. Wherefore it is possible to perceive distinctly in this matter how, being lifeless, it produces living things, and being insensible, yet it plainly fashions artistic shapes both in animals and plants. And Simon said, What? If God himself gave it life, is not he then the cause of the evils which it produces? And Peter says, If God gave it life according to his own will, then it is his Spirit that produces it, and no longer is it anything hostile to God or of equal power with him, or it is impossible that everything made by him is made according as he wishes. But you will say he himself is the cause of evil, since he himself produces the evils through it. What sort, then, is the evils which you speak? Poisonous serpents and deadly plants, or demons, or any other of these things that can disturb men? Which things would not have been injurious had not men sinned, for which reason death came in. For if men were sinless, the poison of serpents would have no effect, nor the activities of injurious plants, nor would there be disturbances of demons, nor would man naturally have any other suffering. But losing his immortality on account of his sin, he has become, as I said, capable of every suffering. But you say, why then was the nature of men made at the beginning capable of death? I tell you, because of free will. For if we were not capable of death, we could not, as being immortal, be punished on account of our voluntary sin, and thus on account of our freedom from suffering. Justice would be still more weakened if we were wicked by choice, for those who should have evil purposes could not be punished on account of their being incapable of suffering. And Simon said to this, I have one thing more to say in regards to the wicked one. Assuredly, since God made him out of nothing, he is in this respect wicked, especially since he was able to make him good by giving him his creation a nature in no way of capable of selecting wickedness. And Peter said, the statement that he created him out of nothing with the power of choice is like the statement we have made above, that having made such a constitution as he can enjoy evils, he himself appears to be the cause of what took place. But since there is one explanation of both statements, we shall show afterwards why it was that he made him rejoice in the destruction of the wicked. And Simon said, if he made the angels also as voluntary agents, and the wicked one departed from a state of righteousness, why has he been honored with a post of command? Is it not plain that he who thus honored him takes pleasure in the wicked, in that he thus honored him? And Peter said, if God set him by law, when he rebelled, to rule over those who were like him, ordering him to inflict punishment on those who sin, he is not unjust. But if it be the case that he has honored him even after his revolt, he who honored him saw beforehand his usefulness. For the honor is temporary, and it is right that the wicked should be ruled by the wicked one, and that the sinners should be punished by him. And Simon said, if then he exists forever, is not the fact of the sole government of God thus destroyed, since there is another power, namely that concerned with matter, which rules along with him? And Peter said, if they are different in their substances, they are different also in their powers, and the superior rules the inferior. But if they are of the same substance, then they are equal in power, and they are in like manner good or bad. But it is plain that they are not equal in power, for the Creator put matter into that shape of the world into which he willed to put it. Is it then at all possible to maintain that it always has existed, being a substance, and is not matter, as it were, the storehouse of God? For it is not possible to maintain that there was a time when God possessed nothing, but he always was the ruler of it. Wherefore also he is an eternal sole ruler, and on this account it would justly be said to belong to him who exists and rules and is eternal. And Simon said, what then? Did the wicked one make himself? And was God good in such a way that, knowing he would be the cause of evil, he yet did not destroy him in his origination, when he could have been destroyed, and not yet being perfectly made? For if he came into being suddenly and complete, then on account he is at war with the creators, having come suddenly into being, possessed of equal power with him. And Peter said, what you state is impossible, for if he came into existence by degrees, he could not have cut him off as a foe by his own free choice. And knowing beforehand that he was coming into existence, he would not have allowed him as a good, had he not known that by reason of him who was useful was being brought into existence. And he could not have come into existence suddenly, complete of his own power, for he who did not exist could not fashion himself, and he neither could become complete out of nothing, nor could anyone justly say that he had a self-subsistence, so as always to be equal in power if he were begotten. And Simon said, is he then a mere relation, and in this way wicked, being injurious as water is injurious to fire, but good for the seasonably thirsty land, as iron is good for cultivation of the land, but bad for murderers? And lust is not evil in respect of marriage, but bad in respect of adultery, as murder is an evil, but good for the murderer as far as his purpose is concerned. And cheating is an evil, but pleasant to the man who cheats. And Other things of like character are good and bad in like manner. In this way, neither is evil nor good, for the one produces the other, nor does not that which seems to be done injuriously rejoice the doer, but punish the sufferer. And though it seems unjust that a man should, out of love, gratify himself by every means in his power, to whom, on the other hand, does it not seem unjust that a man should suffer punishments at the hand of a just judge for having loved himself? And Peter said, a man ought to punish himself through self-restraint when his lust wishes to hurry on to the injury of another, knowing that the wicked one can destroy the wicked, for he has received power over them from the beginning. And not yet is this evil to those who have done evil, but that their souls should remain punished after the destruction. You are right in thinking to be really harsh, though the man who has been foreordained for evil should say that it is right. Wherefore, as I said, we ought to avoid doing injury to another for the sake of a short-lived pleasure, that we may not involve ourselves in external punishment for the sake of a little pleasure. And Simon said, is it the case, then, that there is nothing either bad or good by nature, but that the difference arises through law and custom? For it is not the habit of the Persians to marry their own mothers, sisters, and daughters, while marriage with other women is prohibited as most barbarous. Wherefore, if it is not settled that things are evil, it is not possible for all to look forward to the judgment of God. And Peter said, this cannot hold, for it is plain to all that cohabitation with mothers is abominable, even though the Persians, who are a mere fraction of the whole, should under the effects of a bad custom fail to see the iniquity of their abominable conduct. Thus also the Britons publicly cohabitate in the sight of all, and are not ashamed, and some men eat of the flesh of others, and feel no disgust, and others eat the flesh of dogs, and others practice other unmentionable deeds. Thus then we ought not to form our judgments with the perception which through habit has been perverted from its natural action. For to be murdered is an evil, even if it were to deny it, for no one wishes to suffer it himself, and in the case of theft no one rejoices at his own punishment. If then no one were at all ever to confess that these are sins, it is right even then to look forward of necessity to a judgment in regard to sins. When Peter said this, Simon answered, does this then seem to you to be the truth in regards to the wicked one? Tell me. And Peter said, we remember that our master and teacher commanding us, keep the mysteries for me and the sons of my house, wherefore also he explained to his disciples privately the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven. But to you who do battle with us and examine into nothing else but our statements, whether they be true or false, it would be impious to state the hidden truths. But that none of the bystanders may imagine that I'm contriving excuses because I'm unable to reply to assertions made by you, I shall answer you by first putting the question, if there had been a state of painlessness, what is the meaning of the statement, the evil one was? And Simon said, the words have no meaning. And Peter, is then evil the same as pain and death? And Simon says, it seems so. And Peter, evil then does not exist always, yea, it cannot even exist at all substantially, for pain and death belong to the class of accidents, neither of which can coexist with abiding strength. For what is pain but the interruption of harmony? And what is death but the separation of soul from body? There is therefore no pain when there is harmony, for death does not even at all belong to those which substantially exist. For death is nothing, as I said, but the separation of soul from body, and when this takes place, the body, which is by nature capable of sensation, is dissolved, but the soul, being capable of sensation, remains in life and exists substantially. Hence, when there is harmony, there is no pain, no death, no, not even deadly plants or poisonous reptiles, for anything of such nature that its end is death. And hence, when immortality reigns, all things will appear to have been made with reason, and this will be the case when on account of righteousness man becomes immortal through the prevalence of the peaceful reign of Messiah, when his composition will be so well arranged as not to give rise to sharp impulses, and his knowledge moreover will be unerring, so as that he shall not mistake evil for good, and he will suffer no pain, so that he will not be mortal. And Simon said, you were right in saying this, but in the present world does not man seem to you to be capable of every kind of affection, as for instance of lust, anger, grief, and the like? And Peter said, yes, these belong to the things that are accidental, not to those that are actual, that always exist. And it would be found that they now occur with advantage to the soul. For lust has, by the will of him who created all things, been made to arise within the living being, that led by it to intercourse he may increase humanity, from a selection of which a multitude of superior beings arose, who are fit for eternal life. But if it were not for lust, no one would trouble himself with the intercourse with his wife. But now, for the sake of pleasure, and as it were gratifying himself, man carries out his will. Now if a man uses lust for lawful marriage, he does not act impiously, but if he rushes to adultery, he acts impiously, and he is punished because he makes a bad use of a good ordinance. And in the same way, anger has been made by God to lighten up naturally within us, in order that we may be induced by it to ward off injuries. Yet if anyone indulges it without restraint, he acts unjustly. But if he uses it with due bonds, he does what is right. Moreover, we are capable of grief, that we may be moved with sympathy at the death of relatives, or a wife, or children, or brothers, or parents, or friends, or some others. Since we were not capable of sympathy, we should be inhuman. In like manner, all the other affections would be found adapted for us, for if at least the reason for their existence be considered. And Simon, why is it then that some die prematurely and periodical diseases arise, and that there are moreover attacks of demons and of madness and other kinds of afflictions which can greatly punish? And Peter said, because men, following their own pleasure in all things, cohabit without observing proper times, and thus the disposition of seed, taking place unseasonably, naturally produces a multitude of evils. For they ought to reflect that as the season has been fixed suitable for planting and sowing, so days have been appointed as appropriate for cohabitation, which are carefully to be observed. Accordingly, someone well instructed in the doctrines taught by Moses, finding fault with the people for their sins, called them sons of the new months according to the moon. Yet in the beginning of the world men lived long and had no diseases, but when through carelessness they neglected the observation of the proper times, then the sons of in succession cohabiting through ignorance at times, when they ought not, place their children under innumerable afflictions. Wherefore our teacher, when we inquired of him in regards to the man who was blind from his birth, and recovered his sight, if this man sinned or his parents, that he should be born blind, answered, neither did he sin at all, nor his parents, but that the power of God might be made manifest through him in healing the sins of ignorance. And in truth, such afflictions arise because of ignorance, as, for instance, by not knowing when one ought to cohabit with his wife, as she be pure from her discharge. Now the afflictions which you mentioned before are the result of ignorance, and not assuredly of any wickedness that has been perpetrated. Moreover, give me the man who sins not, and I will show you the man who suffers not. And you will find that he not only does not suffer himself, but that he is able to heal others. For instance, Moses, on account of his piety, continued free from suffering all his life, and by his prayers he healed the Egyptians when they suffered on account of their sins. And Simon said, let me grant that this is the case. Does not the inequality of lot amongst men seem to you most unjust? For one is in penury, another one is rich, another sick, another in good health, and there are innumerable differences of like character in human life. And Peter said, do you not perceive, Simon, that you are again shooting your observations beyond the mark? For while we were discussing evil, you made a digression and introduced the question of the anomalies that appear in the world. But I shall speak even to this point. The world is an instrument artistically contrived, that for the male who is to exist externally, the female may bear eternal righteous sons. Now they could not have been rendered perfectly pious here, had there been no needy ones for them to help. In like manner, there are sick, that they may have objects for their care, and the other afflictions admit of like explanation. And Simon said, are not those in humble circumstances unfortunate, for they are subjected to distress, that others may be made righteous? And Peter said, if their humiliation were eternal, their misfortune would be very great, but the humiliations and exaltations of men take place according to lot, and he who is not pleased with his lot can appeal, and by trying his case according to law, he can exchange his mode of life for another. And Simon said, what do you mean by this lot in his appeal? And Peter said, you're now demanding the exposition of another topic, but if you permit me, I can show you how being born from above and changing your origin and living according to the law, you may obtain eternal salvation. And Simon, hearing this, said, Do not imagine that when I, while questioning you, agreed with you in each topic, I went to the next as being fully assured of the truth of the previous. But I appeared to yield to your ignorance, that you might go to the next topic, in order that, becoming acquainted with the whole range of your ignorance, I might condemn you not through mere conjecture, but from full knowledge. Allow me now to retire for 3 days, and I shall come back and show you that you know nothing. When Simon said this, and was on the point of going out, my father said, Listen to me, Simon, for a moment, and then go wherever you like. I remember that in the beginning, before the discussion, you accused me of being prejudiced, though as yet you had no experience of me. But now, having heard you discuss in turn, and judging that Peter has the advantage, and now assigning to him the merit of speaking truth, is it not plain that I know how to judge correctly, or is it not so? For if you should say that I have judged correctly, but do not agree, then you are plainly prejudiced, inasmuch as you do not wish to agree after confessing your defeat. But if I was not correct in maintaining that Peter has the advantage in the discussion, do you convince us how we have not judged correctly, or do you cease to discuss with him before all, since you will always be defeated, and agree in consequence that your own soul will suffer pain, condemned as you will be and in disgrace, through your own consciousness, even if you do not feel shame before all the listeners as the greatest torture. For we have seen you conquered, in fact, and we have heard your own lips confess it. Finally, therefore, I am of an opinion that you will not return to the discussion as you promised, but that you may seem not to have been defeated as you promised when going away, that you will return. And Simon, hearing this, gnashed his teeth for rage and went away in silence. But Peter, for a considerable portion of the day, still remained, laid his hands on the large multitude to heal them, and having dismissed them, went into the house with his more immediate friends and sat down. And one of the attendants, of the name Zephaniah, said, Blessed is Yahweh, O Peter, who selected you and instructed you for the comfort of the good. For in truth you discussed with Simon with dignity and great patience. But we beg of you to discourse to us of evil, for we expect that you will state to us your own genuine belief in regards to it. Not, however, at the present moment, but tomorrow, if it seems good to you, for we spare you because of the fatigue you feel on account of your discussion. And Peter said, I wish you to know that he who does anything with pleasure finds rest in the very toils themselves, but he who does not do what he wishes is rendered exceedingly weary by the very rest he takes. Wherefore you confer on me a great rest when you make me discourse on topics which please me. Content then with his disposition, and sparing him on account of his fatigue, we requested him to put the discussion off till the night, when it was his custom to discourse to his genuine friends, and partaking of salt, we turned to sleep. All right, next time we'll be on Book 20, and we'll be finishing up the sermons of Peter. Thanks for listening. Shalom.